Mayong gabi o mayong aga sa tanan. Let's continue our meditation on the journey of Abraham, the father of faith. He is an example for us. As being the father of faith, we can learn a lot of how he went on with his journey sa pagsunod niya sa Ginoo. And today, the title of our meditation is The God Who Sees. Genesis 16, 1 to 16. Verse 1. Now Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. So here we see that Sarai had experienced impatience along the way. As they followed God, as they went on through those years of following His word, starting from their origin, nation, we can now see that she has experienced impatience, and then she resorted sa disobedience sa pulong sa Ginoo. We can also see here that the disobedience did not originated from Abram but from his wife Sarai. We see here that she induced Abram. And it is not Abraham per se ang nag-start sang kumbaga disobedience. Just like Adam and Eve, no? Ang asawa, ang babayi, ang una nga nagpaminsar or ang expose or nagpatempt, no, sa sala. Ang lalaki, of course, may sala man because na-induce man siya. Duwa sila ang principal authors. Ang isa is principal nga na-induce, no, nadala. Ang isa is ang principal author sang sala or actor sang sala, which nag-originate or nag-idea. And then we see here that she subdued, no, her conjugal rights as a wife. Ginpaidalom niya since nga wala siya sang bata, give up niya kumbaga ang iya kaugalingon, ang iya rights to have a child, and exposed the servant Hagar. So, makita taman diri that we know that silosa gid ang mga babayi, especially sa ilang mga bana. But here, ang iya pagkasilosa daw kumbaga give up niya, set aside niya. Okay? And of course, it is not a light sin to be impatient with God's promises and just to resort to disobedience. God designed, of course, the human race to be propagated through sacred marriage, and to defile the marriage or the conjugal bed through adultery or through this illicit affair or pregnancy would also be a violation against God. Although polygamy was very popular sa una, damo ang mga tao, mga laki sa mga concubines, yet it should have never been left to the will of man to obey God's command. Okay, to obey God, it's not that the end will justify the means. It's not that. As long may saying, as long na-fulfill mo ang goal, as long na-fulfill mo ang output, it doesn't matter what your means is. No, for God, it matters. Even the means itself, it's something that God will look upon. Okay, nor even Abraham was free of fault. Si Abraham may sala man diri, no? Because nagpa-induce man siya, nagpati man siya, nagpadala man siya sa iyang asawa. So both of them had their faith defective with regard to the means or the method na gingamit nila. We learn that God does not in vain command, and He does not just command people and then just wait until it is accomplished, but God is, again, as we said, is concerned with how we obey that command. And then we also see here that when we hasten or magdali-dali kita sa mga gusto naton, kung impatient kita, kag mag-discontented kita sa Ginoo, then we will go beyond God's boundaries, and we will not like the dire consequences. So, as we can see here, she she had borne him no children. Okay? It seems nga may excuse siya sa pagpakasala si Sarah, And this is what also uh, our tendency could be nga may irason kita nga mga bagay and use them as an excuse to disobey God, just like Sarah. Kita to diri ang anatomy sang sala, sang pagpakasala. Okay? And then do ginbasol niya pa kumbaga. Ginbasol niya ang Ginoo as God restrained her from childbearing. Okay? And then instead of casting her care on God and the power to the order of nature, he neglected nga ang Ginoo may power over nature. Nalipatan niya ang mga miracles na ginobra ni sang Ginoo sa iya, gin-deliver sila sa war, gin-deliver sila kay Pharaoh, gin-supplyan sila sang ilang needs, etc. etc. Nalipatan na niya, no? And gin-neglect niya to infer from her past and God's past faithfulness, and that God could even open her womb despite her age. So mo na kisang nature sa aton impatience kag sang pagpakasala, no? We forget. Okay, just to put it simply, nagapakasala kita because ginalipatan ta or nalipatan ta ang gahom sang Ginoo. We sometimes either intentional forgetfulness, or it could be we are too overwhelmed by our distractions that we fail to pause and meditate and ponder about God's previous works in our lives, and then we fall into sin. Verse 2, and Sarai said to Abraham, behold, now the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant, it may be that I shall obtain children by her. And Abraham listened to the voice of Sarai. So as we said kagina, kita rin nga dugin basol niyang Ginoo. God, no? The Lord has prevented me from bearing children. So mo isang nature sang sin, no? Even Eve and even Abraham. So Adam blamed Eve, the woman, ambal si Ginoo, the woman that you gave me. Okay? And then also Eve said, no, the serpent made me do it. So in our journey, of faith, just like the father and the spouse of the father of faith, amo maning ilang tendency, no? Let's be very careful because may mga subconscious thinking kita kisa nga gina basol ta blang Ginoo, no? Person siya away man ko gingan sa Ginoo bata. May kumaga may hint of blame, may hint of discontent. So dira na siya gasugod ang aton nga mga rebellious acts, no? We start by blaming God. Mo ko sini kay ginhimo ko sang Ginoo amon ni, no? We do not have the spirit of acceptance and submission. We fight, no? We fight our kumaga right. We tell God na I have the right to have this, Lord. I don't have the right to have this. So amo na siya nga gasugod na kita sang parehuman sa matabo di saya. So Sarai claimed for herself by right of dominion, because maidservants do not bear children for themselves since they have no power over their own bodies. So in other words, paubos niya ang iyang pagkaasawa kag nag-recourse siya, nagamit siya sang polygamous affair o polygamous method to fan her husband also to disobedience. And also ang iyang impatience nag-lead man sang iyang husband to also disobey and be impatient with the promises of God. Okay, we ought to be on guard with this, because even the father of faith, no, he was assailed by stealth, and even the temptation did not come from evil men, but even from his holy wife. Kumaga, no, ang iyang wife has been called by God, has been a part of God's blessing, but Abraham was tempted by the church member herself. kumbaga member si Sarah isang church, no, or isang people of God, but Abraham fell into sin because of the inducement sang fellow believer man. So let us be careful that sometimes it is not Satan that leads us to sin, no, but the fellow believers. And she was again induced by a holy woman by the name of Sarai. And here we see the word, okay, Abraham listened to the voice of Sarai. Okay? Ang balidre, I can build a family through her. So, muna isa ka version, dari nga, I shall obtain children by her. Though, ang lusot niya is surrogate mother, si Sarai, I mean si Hagar, kumaga daw adapon niya, or in other words, i-treat niya as her child since wala man siya bata. Kagti, as a servant, they have control over their servants, no? On that time. So, we see here that Abraham agreed. Abraham listened. Here, Abraham's faith was wavered or had wavered. He allowed himself to be persuaded by his wife and to do what is prohibited. Okay? We should not be discouraged as if we are tempted. No? What is important is that we it will not go down to our hearts and to our actions. So, kay si Abraham diri natentar pero namati kaginubra niya. So temptations come all the time, but the most important thing is they do not go down to our hearts, because as Jesus said, we sin with our hearts, no? In our hearts we think, in our hearts God can see it, and it's important that it should not transcend into actions. Muna siya importante dira. But Abraham listened and do what Sarai had wanted him to do. Okay, we see that Abraham was very invincible, very man of faith, very patient. He even won and killed the kings, or I mean the enemies. There are great kings. He was a strong, combatant, but here he was a weak man who yielded in a single moment of temptation. So let this be a lesson to us that no matter how strong we are, how victorious we are, or we were in the past, there could be a possibility that at one point, at 1 second, we may fall to temptation. Therefore, let us stand strong and firm in the faith, and we must daily pray that God shall not lead us into temptation. Muna siya atong prayer dapat. Number 3 or verse 3. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. So take note that Sarai did not turn their house into a house of prostitute, no, but because the word here, she gave her to Abram as a wife. Okay, as a wife, not as a siguro prostitute, or as we said kay na sin pabusongon lang, but as a wife gid. So in other words, she did not violate her chastity nor turn her house into an illicit house, no, but just to still gain God's favor, gain marry niya in her own eyes, gain pakasal niya sila duwa. And this is actually a warning also, that no matter how sinful a thing is, we cannot change that just by changing the name, no, just by calling it with a good name. A sin still remains as a sin. Amo man sa aton society subong, no, ang sala gina-relabel, no, ginalain lang ang ngalan just to make it sound okay and fine, but actually it is a blatant sin against God. Amo man ning natabo sa again sa kay Sarai, gintawag niya ang isa ka bagay as something that is innocent or something that is good, no? At least the wife, no? There's nothing bad with that. Kumbaga, she thought na I will call you as a wife of my husband. So how how curious or how kumbaga do ka confusing would that be, no? That you will choose a wife. You as a wife will choose another wife for your own spouse. So that is the tendency of humans to recall, to relabel things. And verse 4, and he went into Hagar and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. So this, we see the punishment of impulsiveness, of discontent. Automatically, right away, ang consequence ang iya sala na experience niya, which is contempt on her mistress. Okay, na nangakig siya, no? Na nainit siya sa iyang konsekwensya sa iya sala. And also Abraham, who easily believed, was also chastised grievously by his wife, who has so bitter with their servant. So not only Hagar suffered the consequence, but also Abraham nagsuffer siya. Who can live, no, with an angry and jealous woman? So nagselos siya, nangakig siya. Kag kumbaga iya man sala, pero siya man mismo nangakig. Amo na isang nature, no, naton yung mga tao, ato nakisa sala, ato nakisa ang kitimo nakisa hinimuan, pero kung mag-rebound na sa imo, sa aton ang mga konsekwensya, kita man mismo mangakig, kag mamasol pa ta sa iban. Amo na, no? Ikaw na yan nagpili sa imo desisyon. Ikaw na yan nagliko sa sina nga course or path. But then sang sang nabulilyaso na, kag sa naglawas agna ang mga butang, dito kaya sa imo naman nga pamilya mangakig, no? Kag luluoy lang gid sina. So let this be a lesson again that let us endure, let us practice patience, let us practice self-control, let us practice faith, have faith in God's promises, because if not, then like Abraham and Sarai, we suffer consequences. If not automatically, then it could be soon, unless we go back to God. Verse 5, and Sarai said to Abraham, may the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge me between you and me. So in other words, now ginbasol niya si Abraham ng yabana. Ang kaladlawan na muna, no? Imo sala, ginpaubra mo sa iya, sang nagsala, sang nagselos ka, basulon mo ang imong bana. She was greatly upset. She insulted Abraham. She reproached him with the fact that ginatag ko si imong ang maid, ginatag ko si imong servant, pero ginpabusong mo siya. So how blind is this? Ambal nila love is blind. This one is anger is blind. Okay, she thought at first nga she was obeying God, she was obeying the promise of God, but sang hindi na, gin-govern siya sa iya anger. Let us now resolve to govern our own passions. Kag nagambal pagid siya, may the Lord judge between you and me. Kulubaan, kiti this is an improper use of God's name. Thou shalt not use the name of the Lord your God in vain. Because gina-call out niya ang judgments ng Ginoo, which kabalo kita nga this is so wrong, no? This is so wrong, because if God could have been the judge at this time, she could have easily been dead or condemned on the spot. Okay, God could have executed him, because in anger she dealt rashly upon the thing that she brought upon herself, no? Kag muna ang lesson dira naton sa aton self man that we might consider our own dapat, no, nga mga sala, not to blame it to others. And she might have been too blinded. So this is again a lesson that even the most ordered families are sometimes not free from these contentions. Okay, the faithful must prepare themselves to cut off these occasions of trouble. Okay, even a woman and man of faith, and the family of faith, is not immune to this. Verse 6, but Abraham said to Sarai, behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. Okay? Ang makita ta dring humanity, ang kaluoy man ni Abraham kay Sarah, wala siya namasol, wala man siya nangakig, but wala niya ginaway ang niya asawa. He had the best reason to quarrel against his wife na maimo mo ni sala, no, mamuna sa tani, amo mo ni sala, ikaw man nagsugo sa akon. So imbis mang masol man si Abraham for the sake of peace, okay, he did not violate the feelings of Sarai, but Abraham himself violated his own feelings. Nga mambal ta gin-violate ni Abraham niya feelings because iya to bata ang ara sa tiyan ni Hagar, and ginpabayaan niya nga i-deal harshly ang babayi nga may anak niya sa sulod. Okay, Hagar was pregnant. But then, why did Abraham turn his compassion and his concern? Okay? And why did he not turn his love to Hagar knowing that she has her son? So because of the divine command, no? He was awakened to his senses. Okay? Kumaga ang iyang senses na awakened, that even to the point that he rejected the hope that was inside her, the hope of a baby that could have been, they thought, the promise of God, the fulfillment of God's promises. Okay? So makita ta diri nga once we attempt to forget God's to disobey God's word, then we will see the stability of God's authority. No? Nakita ta diri nga ang life will be unstable if we depart away from God, just like Abraham. He planned, and his plan was not accommodating God's command. And then when he went outside, na-feel niya ang instability, ang away, ang selos, ang gamo, okay, ang kaluoy sang servant, no, ang baby nga madamay nga wala man sang sala. So tatlo ka kabuhi ang ginaproblemahan diri subong ni Abraham as a consequence of disobedience. So we can never mix our disobedience with God's command. We cannot obey as a means ang unlawful nga bagay as a means to accomplish divine objective. Okay? Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, or with Hagar. Okay, he humbled her. Okay, I submit nga wala gid nga kumbaga cruel katama si Sarai. She still remained as a wife, no, as a head of, as an ilaw ng tahanan. Okay, she still used her proper authority, not hindi nga grabe nga pangastigo siguro, but what does it mean that in a way nga si Hagar makabatyag emotional distress, no, kag makabatyag man sang ginatawag nga conscience, no, konsensya na tawag nila nga kung tanawon ta diri si Hagar may kalaman no, hindi taman masiling Hagar was totally innocent, kay she acted also upon with will, no, with the intention, no. And we can also see nga sa pila niya ka years nga upod-upod sa faithful family, sa church, kumaga sa anak sang Ginoo, sa gintawag sang Ginoo, makambal naman sa tani no nga hindi ni gusto sang Ginoo. Pero si Hagar nagpabulag-bulag man sa nga to the point nga nagdisobey man siya sa gusto sang Ginoo. And then we can see that this is now Sarai dealing against her, but I submit that it is also her conscience dealing harshly with her. I submit nga kung may bagay kita nga ginubra nga hindi lang ang tao or hindi lang tao mag-deal harshly sa aton. Even our own conscience, even our own moral compass will keep on disturbing us. And magsiling sang Bible, the wicked runs when no one is chasing. The wicked runs where no one is running after him. So mumuning kay Sarah, I believe nga grabe nang iyang konsensya nga naglagan siya palayo, nalagyo siya palayo. And then the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to shore. So nalagyo siya agi sa desert, and I submit nga ginungod niya gid ni because sa kahuya, no, giniwasan niya ang mga syudad. So nagagi siya sa desert, and when you pass by the desert, there is a spring of water there, and then the mercy of the Lord found him through an angel of the Lord. She deserved punishment, of course, because of her disobedience as well, but God's mercy ran after her. God corrected her through gentle remedies. It is probable that she might wanted to return to her own country, to her own land, but God chased her. And then, what did God say? Verse 8, and he said, Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going? She said, I am fleeing from my mistress, Sarai. So here God used the nickname Hagar, servant of Sarai. So here we see that our calling does not change if we just escape. Okay, liberty is obtained not by escaping, but by really freeing from slavery. So naging servant siya to, pagpalagyo niya, servant mangyapon siya sa panulukan sang Ginoo. So just an insight here, ang Ginoo, kung anong calling sang Ginoo sa aton, it will remain until He change that calling. That is a divine appointment. God is divinely appointing us to certain places in life, okay? And it does not change if we try to escape. Kung gintawag ka sang Ginoo, hindi ka gid kapalagyo. Example, servant ka sang Ginoo. No, gusto niya ka maging servant. Either maging pastor, missionary, or doctor, or teacher, or diin ka man da i-serve, no? Kag kung malagyo-lagyo ka, biska hindi ka makadto, kung ano ang calling sa imo, that will remain. Okay? Lagsun ka. Person ginlagas sa sang angel, ginlagas sa sang Ginoo. And then, her condition did not change. In short, okay, the angel of the Lord would draw us back by putting his own hand upon us. Okay? Where have you come from and where are you going? Amunay pamangkot. This is not an inquiry as if the angel does not know. Kumbaga hindi ni nga way kabalo ang angel, but God already knows. The reason why ang Ginoo nagapamangkot kung kaisa is for us to realize our own condition, to raise up what is hidden inside us. Amo na ang rason nga ga-question, no, ang Ginoo, to let us realize what we are thinking and to let us reflect, okay, on ourselves. So nga basta Ginoo nga nagapalagyo ka, diin ka halin kag diin ka makadto. So this is like God asking Adam and Eve, why did you feel that you are naked? Okay, where are you running to? Amo na ang pamangkot man sa, I think, sa disciples, you know, where kagang sabat sa mga disciples, where will we go? Di kami makadto. Amo man na sa aton, kung malagyo ka sa Ginoo, sa calling sa Ginoo sa imo, kung malagyo ka from the church, kung malagyo ka from God's people, like her, like Hagar, the question of God is, diin ka makadto. No? Din ka alin, pero din ka makadto. For me, this is a very deep question. Try ka malagyo, but sa diin ka makadto. Diin ka gid makakadto kung makalabot. Pero dire nagambal siya, I am running away from my mistress. And this is actually to cut off the deceit in our hearts. Why? Because I submit. Ang tutuod nga ginapalagyuhan ni Sarai is ni Hagar, sorry, is ang iyaman mismo nga conscience, ang iyaman mismo nga sala, no? And also the harsh treatment, not just of her conscience, but the harsh treatment of her master. Which again, amo man sa aton nga life, no? Mahimo ka ba sala sa imo employer, mahimo ka sala sa nanay mo, nga kig ang tawo sa imo. Kag kung malagyo kita, mahambag kisa kitang tungod akig ang tao, tungod akig ang master ta. But actually, aton man mismo konsyensya ginabother kita. No? Verse 9, the angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. Okay? This is actually the point of God nga ginpamangkot siya. Because iparealize sa iya, no, nga kinanglan niya magbalik. Nga malagyo ka, kag nga ading ka makadto, balik ka to. No? Balik ka to. Let's return. Muna sa ato, no, we can only return if we know where we have come from. Pareho man ba sa prodigal son, di ba? Prodigal son ni nga nadumduman niya ang kaayo, ang goodness ng iya father. Pag sangga kao na to sa sang damog, no? Na-realize niya ang balay sa niya tatay. Dito hindi na kinanglan magkaon damog. Ang kaluoy sa niya tatay. Mumuni ang sa harshness siguro sang desert, kag sa harshness ang iyang kadtuan, sa iyang home country, no? Way na sa balikan. Nadumduman niya may goodness ang Ginoo ara pa man to sa kanday Abraham. Just return to your mistress and submit to her. Kag kita diri nga miskan may aka-akig si Sarai, ang Ginoo ginapabalik sa gyapon. Amo man nagali no sa imo ug sa akon, kung nakaobra ka man sala sa imong parents, kung nakaobra ka sala sa isa ka authority, sa imo church, no, sa imo pastor, kaobra ka sala sa someone nga gin-appoint sang Ginoo for your own good, return. Just return. Hindi ibot sing ganun nga nakasala ka, malagyo ka na, kag hindi na sila sa imo. Ginhatag sila sang Ginoo sa imo, kag ikaw ginhatag ka man sang Ginoo sa ila. Nga atipanon kanila. In other words, you are also their liability and their responsibility. So, return. Amo man nga ang Ginoo gali, yes, nakasala kita, pero gusto gyapon na sang Ginoo nga magbalik kita sa ila. Because sila ang earthly authorities. So, dire, yes, silos na silos si Sarai, pero ginapabalik sa gyapon sang Ginoo kay Sarai. Ano yan ikaw kung si Sarai ka? Hindi mo na gusto kasi lose ko na sila nga babayi, pero ang Ginoo gustong obdanay ka mo gyapon. So do ka lang, no? Kag that is something to think about. And verse 10, the angel of the Lord also said to her, I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude. So ginpromisahan man si Hagar sang Ginoo. This is a comfort to her. A comfort nga mag-allure man sa iya sa obedience. Kay kusa hindi ang tandaan tagid, God does not want us to obey involuntarily. He wants us to obey voluntarily and with our hearts and with our own volition. Hindi siya gusto sang servitude, no? But He wants us to come and follow. So comfort ni nga magbalik siya. So hindi lang nga magabalo, balik ka to, kag submit ka. Gindugangan pigid sang Ginoo another comfort. Balik ka to kay ako bahala sa imong offspring kag padamuon ko. In other words, ang una when they hear this, magdamo sila bata, that is a comfort for them because for them it's wealth, no? The human capital, kumbaga. the greatest capital, the greatest resource is human resource. Sa ila, that sounds true, and at the same time now, it's also true for us, human resources. Verse 11, and the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. Okay. Although we will afterwards see that this man, Ishmael, was reprobate, no, he was disobedient to God, yet he had an honorable name. The Lord has listened to your affliction. The Lord listened to your affliction. Amo man itaning akong title, no, the Lord has listened to your affliction. And God is the one that hears. God is the one that can hear our cries. For the Lord only has listened to your affliction. Makita ta diri nga do wala man nagpray si Hagar, but God visited her. So there are two ways that God will visit us and hear us. Number one is when we pray, and number two, if we are afflicted. Humanity's cry will reach heaven. This is indeed that He is a God that hears the mute. No, biska ng mute or ng tao wala ka pangamuyo, kag wala siya ginatawag, yet God listens to their miseries. But again, this is not an excuse not to pray, not an excuse nga maging slothful kita, but let us still continue to seek Him without delay. Okay? Verse 12, but he shall be a wild donkey of man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen. This means that the simple meaning of this is he will be a warlike man. Damo siya kontra. Okay? Damo siya maging kaaway. Ang iyang mga kaaway, i-endure niya. Kag he will be against all his kinsmen. Verse 13, so she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, you are a God of seeing. For she said, truly here I have seen him who looks after me. So, diri na-realize ni Hagar nga ang Ginoo nagalantaw sa iya. I submit nga ginapabulag-bulagan niya lang ang Ginoo sa una. Kaya nga, number one, ara siya sa presence ni Abraham and Sarah, nakita niya ang workings ng Ginoo. No? Number two, nakita niya man ang mga promises. Siguro nakita niya nga God is blessing him and his family. No? But still, she chose not to call and to look upon God. But now, as she escaped sa nalagyo siya, na-experience niya mismo personally ang Ginoo. And that's why she says, you are the God of the seeing. She wondered, Hagar wondered at the goodness of God. Hagar had before been too blind. Now, her eyes opened slowly to perceive and see God. She had a lot of proofs before to see God, but now the proof is so tangible. The proof is so personal to her. Okay. Also, the consideration of her place. She was again in the house of God, but now as an exile, and now as being in the desert land, she even felt more of God's presence and that God is looking on her. Umuman na kisa sa ato, no? Kung ara kita sa house of blessing, ara kita sa presence, ang pabor sa Ginoo, dugo pa bulag-bulag kita. Pero kung malabot na kita, kung malagyo kita, kung makalabot kita sa desert, then God will be more, kumaga mas ma-realize ta nga ang ara dara ang Ginoo nagalagas pagid sa aton kag nagalantaw pagid sa aton. May ara kita ginatawag nga prodigal God that even nalagyo nalagsun pa, no? That is the God that when God runs. Kag here we see that he looks upon her and hears her being afflicted with evils in the desert. And verse 14, therefore the well was called Bir Lahairoi, the well of him who lives and sees me. So muning pangalan niya sa lugar, ang Diyos nga nagalantaw sa akon. She humbled herself. She was truly humbled. She has been rebellious, she has been blind, but now the hardness of her heart was broken by afflictions. Okay? And God visited him. God arrested her heart. God saw her heart, and God listened to her distress, to submit her to meekness. Ang namba sa Romans, the goodness of God should lead us to repentance. So paano ito nabalaan nga nagrepent siya? Because nagbalik siya. Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old. So nakita natin rin na wala na siya nalagyo, nag-submit na lang to siya, and that could entail dealing with the harshness of Sarai. But siguro nag-fade naman as the years went by, as the months went by. But nevertheless, she went back to and obey God, no, and followed His will. So let this be a lesson for us again, that the God who sees is with us in our distresses, but nevertheless, let us not obey God by using means, no, that are not in His approval. May God bless His holy word in our hearts.